The night was cold, but the flames licked the studio walls with a hunger that could not be ignored. It was 1999. The production set of a small-budget action film had turned chaotic after an electrical short-circuit ignited a stack of prop crates. People were screaming, running, but not everyone had made it out. Keanu Reeves, still young, still rising, had been knocked unconscious behind a stack of lighting rigs. The smoke was thick, coiling through the rafters like a predator. No cameras were rolling, no headlines were written, no fans knew what was happening. From the shadows, a janitor, name tag half torn, gloves soaked in soot, rushed in when everyone else was rushing out. He had been working overtime that night, unpaid, just to feed his daughter who needed surgery. He had no business running into that chaos, but he did, with trembling arms and a broken flashlight. He reached under the collapsed scaffolding, saw Keanu's limp form, and with a primal grunt, dragged him inch by inch to safety. His jacket caught fire halfway. No one noticed. No one stayed. He laid Keanu near the emergency medics, then slipped back into the smoke like a ghost, never giving his name. Keanu woke up confused, dazed, bruised, and grateful. But the man who saved him was gone. There was no mention in the report, no footage, no witness statement, just a blurry recollection of someone pulling him out. And in the noise of a fast-moving Hollywood career, the incident was buried under years of scripts, premieres, and interviews, but it never left him completely. In quiet moments, in hotel rooms and lonely flights, Keanu would sometimes wonder, who was he? That question stayed like a whisper in his bones. 25 years later, that whisper was about to roar. The rain tapped gently against the tinted window as Keanu sat inside the hospice center's waiting room. His visit was supposed to be quiet, anonymous, just another act of kindness kept off the cameras. A friend of a friend had mentioned a veteran patient who loved Keanu's films but had no family left. The man, now on hospice care, had only weeks, maybe days, to live. Keanu came unannounced, wearing a dark hoodie and simple jeans. No entourage, no publicist, just a small bouquet of wildflowers, picked on the drive over. The nurse on duty was young, barely 23, and visibly starstruck when she recognized him. "Mr. Reeves," she whispered, eyes wide, hand over her chest. Keanu smiled softly, placing a finger to his lips. "Just a friend today," he said. She nodded, understanding more than he said. Moments later, he was led to room 18. A modest space lit with warm yellow lamps, soft jazz playing from a corner speaker, and a frail man asleep under neatly folded blankets. His name, according to the chart, was Isaac D. Monroe. Keanu sat beside him in silence for almost half an hour. No photos, no words, just presence. Then the man stirred, slowly opening cloudy eyes. He blinked at the figure beside him, his voice barely a whisper. "You look just like that kid from the fire." Keanu froze. The nurse looked confused. "What fire?" she asked gently. Isaac chuckled faintly, the sound thin and worn. "Back in the day, little studio fire. Pulled a guy out. Thought he looked like that actor." He coughed, the laugh turning into a wheeze. Keanu leaned closer, voice steady but strained. "Do you remember his name?" Isaac stared at him for a long, long moment, then smiled. "Yours," he said. "It was you." Keanu felt a wave pass through him, part nausea, part clarity. In that instant, the image of the burning set, the collapsing lights, the arm pulling him free, it all sharpened like glass snapping into focus. "Isaac Monroe," he whispered. The nurse's mouth fell open as she glanced at the name tag. "Oh my God," she said softly. "You're him." But Isaac was already slipping back into sleep, unaware of the quiet storm he had just unleashed in the man beside him. Keanu stepped out of the hospice into the soft drizzle, but the world around him felt like it had stopped. The revelation kept looping in his head. Isaac Monroe, he saved my life, and I never knew his name. For years, Keanu had paid forward every act of kindness that touched him. He gave quietly, helped strangers, stayed humble. But this This was personal. He owed this man more than a kind visit or flowers. He owed him everything. He called his private assistant, Josie, one of the few people in his circle who understood discretion. I need you to look into someone. Isaac D. Monroe, born around 1950, possibly worked film sets in the 90s, blue-collar jobs, Bay Area. Start there, he said. Her tone turned serious. Something wrong. Keanu hesitated. No, something right, too late. By the time he returned to his hotel room, Josie had already sent a folder with sparse details. Isaac had no online presence, no family listed, no criminal record. He had worked as a janitor and temporary maintenance contractor on multiple sets, all under a union alias. ID Monroe, old pay stubs, one blurry photo from a crew Christmas party in 1998. In it, Isaac stood near the back, smiling faintly, holding a paper plate of food. Keanu zoomed in until the image pixelated. That was him. Same eyes, same posture, same quiet. He was invisible, Keanu whispered. He saved me and stayed invisible. Then he leaned back in the chair, something breaking in his voice. No more. The next morning, Keanu visited the hospice again, this time with more than flowers. He sat beside Isaac as the old man napped. Then he quietly placed a legal folder on the nightstand. Inside, a fully paid medical trust fund in Isaac's name, a notarized deed transferring ownership of a quiet oceanside house near Big Sur, and a letter handwritten with only one line. You saved my life. Let me give you the peace you deserve. Isaac never read the letter, but the nurse did, and she cried when she did. 3 days later, the hospice staff received an unusual request. A patient, Isaac Monroe, was to be transported to a private coastal property for a comfort-based final stay. Everything was prepaid. The address led to a small, quiet home perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The interior had been freshly restored with warm wood floors, ocean blue linens, and the faint scent of lavender in the air. There were no reporters, no fanfare, just ocean wind and the hush of rolling waves. Keanu stood at the threshold as 2 nurses wheeled Isaac inside. The old man was frilier now, barely able to keep his eyes open, but as the salty air brushed his skin, something stirred in him. He tilted his head toward the sound of the waves, a trembling smile forming. Always wanted to see the ocean again, he whispered. Real ocean, not pictures. Keanu knelt beside him. You will, he said softly. This is your place now. They set Isaac's recliner near the glass doors, open wide to let the breeze in. A soft blanket over his lap, a warm cup of tea in his hand. Keanu sat on the floor next to him, like a grandson visiting an elder. No cameras, no evidence, no need for credit. Just a silent man repaying a life debt, not with noise but with dignity. 4 hours they listened to the sea. Isaac dozed in and out, smiling in fragments. Did you ever become an actor? He murmured at one point. Keanu smiled, blinking back a sudden tear. Something like that. That night, Isaac passed away in his sleep, peaceful. No machines, no alarms, just the sound of waves. Keanu stayed until the body was respectfully taken by the hospice team. He stood alone in the living room afterward, staring at the empty chair by the sea. Then, quietly, he walked to the guest room and placed something on the desk. The same jacket that had once caught fire all those years ago, preserved, repaired, folded. Beneath it, a photo of Isaac smiling from the crew party. A posted note below. Some heroes never want credit, but they still deserve a view like this. Months passed. The world moved on as it always does. Keanu went back to filming, a quiet indie project far from his usual action-packed features. The script had heart. It was about a forgotten war medic who saves a young man and disappears, never to be seen again. Keanu had chosen it for a reason. The producers thought it was just a great character fit. No one realized how deeply personal it was. Every line he delivered, every quiet look into the distance, came from somewhere real, somewhere raw. When the film premiered, critics praised it for its soul. Reeves delivers a career-defining performance, one reviewer wrote, but no one paid much attention to the final credit scroll, those black and white lines that most viewers ignore. Near the bottom, just before the licensing information, was a single-frame dedication that flashed for exactly 3 seconds. In loving memory of Isaac D. Monroe, you saved more than one life. No one asked who he was. No tabloids caught it. No interview brought it up. But the nurse who had sat beside Keanu at the hospice, she noticed. She posted about it months later, not on a gossip site, but in a quiet corner of the internet. Just a thread, a photo of the dedication, and the words, "I was there when Keanu held his hand." He never said a word about who the man was. But now I know. He never forgot. That post did not go viral. It floated through forums like a quiet candle in the dark. Yet slowly the story began to unfold, piece by piece, shared by strangers who still believed in goodness. And so Isaac Monroe, the invisible janitor, the man with burned sleeves and a quiet heart, became something unexpected. A symbol, not of fame, but of remembrance. It started with one comment, then a repost, then a blog article titled, "The Man Who Saved Keanu Reeves," and never took credit. Within days, forums lit up with the quiet shock of something real in a world too noisy with artificial drama. Why did no one talk about this before? One user asked, "Because the best stories are never told by those who live them," another replied. The phrase caught fire. Within a week, hashtags emerged, not trending globally, but circling gently through corners of the internet where sincerity still had a voice. Hashtag Remember Isaac. Hashtag Silent Saviors. Hashtag The Ones Who Walk Away from the Fire. What made the story so powerful was not Keanu's fame. It was how normal Isaac was. Just a man with a night shift, calloused hands, and no backup plan. People began writing about their own Isaacs. Janitors, nurses, substitute teachers, delivery drivers. People who made a difference, then vanished without applause. A bookstore in Oregon created a wall of photos called The Unseen Ones. A local theater in Montreal named its back room Monroe Hall. An anonymous donor paid off 6 hospice debts across California. Each payment came with a note, "From one life saved to many lives remembered." When a small podcast asked Keanu about the online buzz, he didn't say much. He smiled quietly and said, "There are people whose kindness lights fires the world never sees. I just had the chance to see one." He didn't elaborate. He never posted about it. But that clip, just 15 seconds long, spread faster than any marketing campaign ever could. Not because it was loud, but because it was true. And so the movement grew. Not viral, not explosive, but steady like a tide. A quiet revolution of gratitude for the people who show up, do good, and walk away before anyone can say thank you. The cemetery was quiet, touched by the breeze of early spring. Wildflowers dotted the grass, soft bursts of yellow and violet breaking the symmetry of the tombstones. A modest headstone stood near the edge of a grove, away from the polished marbles and grand family vaults. It reads simply, Isaac D. Monroe, 1951 to 2024. He walked through fire for another. Keanu stood alone, dressed in a plain black coat. No security, no car waiting with the engine running. He had come on foot, having asked the caretaker to leave him alone for the hour. In one hand, he held a worn manila envelope. In the other, a small framed photo, the same blurry snapshot from the 1998 crew party, now restored and gently reprinted. He knelt by the grave and placed both items at its base, anchoring them with a stone. Then he sat down on the grass, legs crossed like a child at story time. "I was supposed to thank you 25 years ago," he said quietly, "but I didn't even know your name." His voice cracked, raw from days of silence. "I've had a good life, Isaac. Not perfect, but I got to live it. Because of you." He looked toward the trees, listening to the wind rustle through the branches. "And I'm going to spend the rest of it making sure people like you aren't forgotten anymore." Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was handwritten, same ink as the letter he had left in Isaac's ocean house, but this time longer, more personal. He did not read it aloud. He just placed it beneath the frame, then stood and touched the top of the headstone like one might touch a friend's shoulder. "Goodbye, brother," he whispered. "Your kindness started something bigger than me." As he turned to leave, a group of young volunteers approached quietly from a distance. They were carrying small white flags, each with the name of a local unsung hero written on it. A teacher, a janitor, a bus driver, a nurse. They did not recognize Keanu, and he did not stay for the tribute. He just walked past them with a nod, disappearing into the trees. It began with a single envelope. Keanu returned from set one afternoon to find a plain letter tucked among his usual stack of scripts and fan mail. No return address, no flashy artwork, just a small handwritten note that read, "My father saved a boy from drowning in 1987. No one ever thanked him. I think he would have liked Isaac." Something about the simplicity of the note made Keanu stop. He read it 3 times before carefully folding it back into its envelope and placing it inside a small wooden box on his desk. The next day, another letter arrived, this time from Michigan, then one from Chile, then dozens more. Emails followed, voice messages, packages filled with newspaper clippings, photographs, and scribbled thank you notes. They were not addressed to Keanu the actor. They were addressed to the man who remembered someone no one else had. These weren't fan letters. They were confessions, memories, quiet acknowledgments of people the world had forgotten. A grandmother who sheltered children during a storm, a gas station worker who helped an abused woman escape, a cafeteria cook who fed hungry kids out of pocket. Every story had a common thread. No recognition, no reward, but life-changing kindness. Keanu created a private archive. He had a room in his home cleared out, lined the shelves with folders, journals, photographs, each carefully labeled with the name of the hero, the act, and the person who remembered them. It was not a museum. It was not for show. It was simply a promise. I will not let these names vanish. Some nights, Keanu would sit for hours, reading letter after letter until the sun came up. These weren't his memories, but they felt like threads in a fabric he now belonged to. Isaac had been the first thread, and now a whole quilt of invisible heroes was being stitched together by strangers who just needed to say, they mattered. High in the hills above Santa Barbara, hidden behind a grove of eucalyptus trees, a private piece of land overlooked the Pacific. It had once been part of an abandoned vineyard. Now it was something else entirely, something sacred. Keanu had bought the land quietly under a foundation name and began work without media attention. No blueprints were published, no press releases. Only a handful of workers knew what they were building, and none of them truly understood why. It was a garden, but not for flowers. The central path was made of reclaimed stone, each tile engraved with a name. No dates, no titles, just names. Every one of them came from a letter, a voice message, a story from someone who wanted their forgotten hero to be remembered. At the edge of the garden stood a carved wooden arch with a single phrase burned into the top. Some heroes walk away, but they still leave footprints. Benches lined the outer curve, hand-carved from driftwood. Wind chimes hung in the trees, tuned not to notes, but to breaths. Long, soft, exhaled tones meant to feel like sighs of peace. And in the center of the garden, beneath a large fig tree, stood a stone larger than the rest. It read, Isaac D. Monroe, the one who started it all. Keanu came alone, usually at dusk. Sometimes he brought a name with him, sometimes he just sat. He never filmed it, never invited others. But over time, word of the place spread, not online but through whispers. Letters stopped arriving at his house and began arriving at the foundation instead. People would send names and short stories, trusting that even if no one else knew, this quiet space would remember. The Garden of Names became a secret destination for those who carried silent gratitude, for those who had been saved, seen, or sheltered by someone who never asked for thanks. The theater was packed, the red carpet gleaming under camera flashes, the crowd buzzing with excitement. It was Keanu's first major studio film in years, a return to the spotlight. Journalists leaned over velvet ropes, shouting questions. Paparazzi cameras clicked non-stop. But Keanu walked the carpet quietly, dressed in a classic black suit. No entourage, no designer tags flaunted. He smiled, nodded, signed a few programs. And then, just before he entered the main doors, he paused. A small table stood beside the entrance, not part of the studio display, not part of any promotion. On it, a single white candle flickered inside a glass lantern. No plaque, no explanation, just a single hand-lettered card placed beneath it. For Isaac, and for all the ones who walk away before the applause. People passed it by at first, not noticing. Then someone asked, "Who's Isaac?" Another person shrugged. A third, a journalist, paused, looked back at Keanu now disappearing into the theater, and remembered that quiet dedication at the end of the indie film. Then someone pulled out their phone and whispered, "Wait, that's the Isaac." And suddenly, a murmur swept through the line. Not viral, not chaotic, just real. Inside, Keanu sat quietly in the third row. When the lights dimmed and the studio logo faded into black, a still screen appeared before the opening scene. White text, no music, just silence. To the ones who never stayed for the credits, "You are seen." A few in the audience clapped softly. Most sat in silence, the kind of silence that settles not because there is nothing to say, but because everything has been said without a word. That night, after the after-party faded and the reporters packed up, someone returned to the candle outside. It was still burning, wind blowing against its flame, but steady, just like Isaac.